I was born in Iran, Armenian born in Iran, but I grew up in Canada, and I actually moved to Armenia about 3.5 years ago. I was appointed to my position within a few months of moving to Armenia, and I do not have any experience in the public sector. Um, I've had about 17 years of experience in marketing in Canada. Um, and mostly in the private sector. And this was sort of my first go at working in the public sector. And of course, doing it in my home country was very meaningful. One of my first projects that I took on was actually the rebranding for Armenia as a tourism destination, which was sort of a very interesting and meaningful project because it really was about um, promoting Armenia and positioning Armenia in the right way in the international community, which had never really been done before. So today I figured, sitting among many of you as marketers and communication leaders, to really go through sort of the project that we did, the branding exercise we did as Armenia as a tourism destination. I thought maybe that would be something of interest. So that's what I'll be going through today. I will share my screen so you will see it. Okay. And you tell me when you see it on your screen. Can I get a thumbs up whenever, just so I
Yes,
know?
yes, please.
Yes?
It's visible. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Great.
Yes, please
Thank you so
proceed.
much. Perfect. All right, so I'll try to go through this quickly. Obviously, a few of the things that we were looking for was to define the international market positioning for Armenia, build a clear and positive message, look at the tourism assets that we had, and create a differentiating, inspiring image for the country. Of course, we had many problems. I'd like to see, just show of hands in the room, how many people have heard of Armenia as a country? Some, okay. Have any of you been to Armenia aside from Karan? No. Okay. So as you can see, that's one of the main challenges that we've had is nobody really knows where Armenia even is on a map. When we say Armenia, people say Romania or Albania, and we have to be like, no, 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 it's Armenia. So that's one of the first challenges that we had to overcome. Was how do we become more visible on the world map? Armenia is also known as the first country to accept Christianity as a nation, but of course, we are very much more than that. So, how do we create a narrative that goes beyond the religious symbols? And of course, if anybody knows about Armenians, they automatically think Kardashian or maybe Charles Aznavour or maybe Serj Tankian. But of course, beyond that, how can we leverage these celebrity voices to create a more purposeful narrative? And of course, lastly, we have a great amount of history and culture. And so, how do we strengthen that national belonging and create that story for us? The opportunity directions, obviously, how can we communicate the known and unknown notions about Armenia to nurture a comprehensive and purposeful and bold narrative? In terms of the target audiences, there were many countries that were visiting Armenia that we knew we wanted to continue targeting, like Russia, Iran, Germany, our U.S. diaspora, and some countries in Europe. We focused on four very key, clear directions: our culture, our nature, our gastronomy, which was our cuisine and wine, and sort of adventure tourism as well. When we were looking at value proposition, we looked at sort of the human capital, the natural capital, and the cultural capital, and tried to create sort of that national identity. So looking at sort of the value proposition of what sets us apart, what we really came down to was Armenia's ancient heritage, pristine nature, and rugged landscapes, combined with our hospitality and rich culinary scene, all at an affordable price, is what sets us apart from other destinations. And it's an undiscovered gem with a positive vibe, providing tourists with authentic experiences off the beaten path. When it came to the tone of voice, we knew we wanted to make it relatable to everybody. So our tone of voice was very much friendly, bold, and passionate. That's what was important for us. The brand story and the approach that we had was to leverage our country's competitive assets into a competitive identity. We wanted to create an ongoing long-term story arc. And of course, based on that, the mission became to position distinctively Armenia on the world map. So people would no longer, when we said Armenia, would no longer reply with Romania or Albania. In terms of the vision, we wanted to make Armenia a constant discovery. But we wanted to ensure that when people came to Armenia, they knew that it had multiple facets and many things to see and explore. And they could keep coming back and to see, and they would always see different things and experience different things in Armenia. And so Armenia wasn't just sort of a single thing, it was very much multifaceted. In terms of the brand essence, we want to embody Armenia's DNA, embracing perceptions and experiences of both the visitors and, of course, the residents. And then the iteration process became doing, of course, a lot of research, which I'm sure many of you as marketers make your decisions based on a lot of different kinds of research. So we had user engagement research, we had sort of interim prototype type testing, we had many focus groups in between, and of course that led us to the final brand development. We went through multiple interview process. We spoke to tourists that were in the country from our target countries, and so we collected all that information, which helped us with, of course, the final brand development. Some of the insights, the country perception, of course, was that it's a hidden gem. It's got boundless warmth and hospitality, and there's this notion of embracing and anchored in soundscape. There's a lot of musicality in our culture. In terms of the country experience, again, that authentic feeling of belongingness. We got this feedback from a lot of people that regardless of whether they were Armenian or not, when they came to Armenia, they felt like home, and there was a sense of belonging, which was really interesting to see. And of course, that off the beat, surprising landscapes. Armenia is a very mountainous country, and there's a lot of tourists that come to Armenia just for the hiking experience. They want to go into nature. They want to go off the beaten path without sort of being led there by, even tour guides. They can find their own way, end up on top of a mountain, sort of in a peaceful environment, and that's what Armenia was giving them. So sort of the big idea was, how do we position Armenia as like this destination? Of course, we had to put together the country perception and the country experience to come to that final formula. So what we came down with is Armenia is magnetic and it's a generous country. And these are sort of the feelings that it gives you. So I'll go through these fairly quickly. It's surprising and spontaneous and brings those spontaneous emotions. It's rooted in symphony, and that's sort of the big idea, was a rooted symphony, rooted in terms of the culture and the history, and the symphony being it's multifaceted, it's ever-changing, there's a musicality to it, and it's something that can be interpreted differently by every single person that experiences it, feels it, and hears it. That's rooted in Armenia's back to essential identity. It's composed of the millennia-old hidden gems, our generational cultural know-how and traditions. It's grounded in our human values. It's anchored in our natural wilderness that we have. And so symphony relates to how every target audience embodies and composes the experience of Armenia in their own terms. And it's punctuated by, it's a hybrid tempo. It's adventurous improvisation. It's got complex harmonies. And of course, this all led to the tagline that we eventually ended up choosing, which was the hidden track. So the hidden track refers to the unexplored and off the beaten path destination that it is. It refers to the surprise effect that Armenia brings to the table. And then after that, we came to the visual identity. How do we create this visual identity for this brand that we're creating? Of course, there's multiple elements, as you all know, the work marks, the typeface, the illustrations, the layout colors, and of course, photos as well. So here's what you see, and if you're just looking at it, I mean, I would have loved to be there in person doing this presentation. So I'd love to hear your thoughts of what you see when you look at this slide. What I saw when we were getting presented this was sort of the Armenian landscape, the mountains, the sun, the clouds, the birds. We saw the hills and valleys, and this is what it looked like when I saw this. It immediately reminded me of the Armenian landscape. And so when you really take away the extra, you really come to Armenia as that logo type. Our agency did a wonderful job of also creating a font that's unique for us from scratch. And so we have a unique font called Soundscape that we're also using in our branding, which is very exciting. And as you can see, there are multiple ways of writing the letters. There's different ways of writing N as an example, or O as an example, or R as an example. And this, again, goes back to the idea is Armenia is ever changing. It's constantly evolving. It's a constant surprise. And so this very fluid font that was created for us also allows us to show that constant change and movement in the brand, which was, again, very exciting for us. And I'll show you some of the examples of what that looks like when you really put it on marketing assets. The yellow in the middle is Armenian letters. So they, aside from creating Latin letters for us in English, they also did the letters for us in Armenian as well. These are just a few of the examples. And of course, you'll see how they took elements from the font that they created that we can then incorporate into all of our assets that we would come up with after. And I'll show you some examples. So you'll see at the very bottom of this page, the soundscape components that they've taken out of the font that we would then use in the marketing assets that we would take going forward. And there's another example of it on this building. And of course, those would also help us come up with different elements and icons. So this one we would use a lot for our cuisine. Of course, it's a chef with a chef hat. And I'll give you a few other examples. So when you're looking at this might look very busy, but I'll go into it a little bit more in detail. Again, these were the 4 directions that we were focusing on when we were positioning Armenia when it came to culture, gastronomy, adventure, and nature. And in these little elements, if your screen is big enough, I hope you can see on the left side, as an example, under culture, right in the middle of the screen, you can see the cross towards the bottom, and at the top you see what looks like a temple, which represents the Garmi temple in Armenia. When you're looking at adventure, to the left bottom, I'm sure if you can see the mountains, there are elements of zip lining, there is elements of hot air balloon, there is elements of bicycle, and of course, same thing on gastronomy and nature. We had all these elements that were baked into each of those directions that, again, every time we wanted to use in our assets, we could pick out of these sort of stories that they created for us and use when we're telling the story of Armenia. And again, this is just a closer up one of those, so you can see how that translates. And again, a few examples of what that looks like in actual assets, what it will look like on T-shirts and bags. And this is sort of a business card as an example. And yeah, and again, with going back to the idea of constant discovery, you'll see in this element, I'm sure if you look closely enough, you'll see where it says "Welcome to Armenia" in the font. And of course, it's sort of hidden amongst all the little icons and elements that you see. And of course, going back to the idea of soundscape and musicality, our branding team used sort of the overtone grid when it came to what the designers, how they should be designing. And so as an example, just you can see what that looks like. A few examples on our page. In terms of colors, wild apricot was sort of the main color that it was chosen because apricot is sort of known as like the national fruit of Armenia. We have really amazing fruit that in May and June it's ready. So I hope if you ever do come to Armenia, you do come see us in June. That's when apricot season, and again, it's national fruit, so we wanted to really lean into that. So this became Armenia, the hidden track, as sort of the overall brand. And these are the colors that we went with that describe sort of each of the 4 directions. And of course, you'll see the wild apricot is carried through all 4 directions throughout. And again, just some more examples of what that looks like when you're bringing it back to the assets. So that's sort of the overall messaging that I want to share with you today in terms of the Armenia, the hidden track. And I mean, I started the presentation with many people asking many of you if you've been there and many of you hadn't. So I hope that if I end the presentation asking, now that you know a little bit more about Armenia, how many of you would like to visit Armenia? I hope that more hands go up at the end of the presentation. I wanted to thank you for your time, but if I can please ask, I wanted to end the presentation with a quick 2-minute video that we had created when we did the brand launch, which just sort of showed how we came about to creating the brand story in a quick 2-minute video. So if I can please ask you to put that up for the attendees, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Allow me a minute as we try to play the video.
No problem.
Well, my sunscreen is lightweight, high protection, and has no white cast. Big Sturma Shadow Sunscreen.
Every minute, every second. Well, thank you very much. I'm not certain if I'm audible to you. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, how about we bring up a very enthusiastic chair for this particular session. And as you said, we hope to host you live for the 6th edition. Thank you very much for taking our time and sharing your valuable insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.